What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be answering some questions about perfumery that you guys had. So I've been doing perfumery for about 5-6 years, and I put out a post the other day just saying, hey, if you guys have any sort of questions relating to making perfumes, making fragrances or production of fragrances, the materials involved, anything like that, just let me know and I'll make a video on it. And so here we are. We got a couple of great questions that you guys had for me. Not as many as I was expecting, but if you have any extra questions, we can always throw them in the comments below in this video as well. So let's just jump into it. So our first question comes from LRC4263. How's it going, Lyric? Good to see you in the comments there. It says, I'm interested in extracting fragrance. My fiance is deep into gardening and has started a bit of a fragrance garden for me with a bunch of herbs, spices, and florals that I've requested. I think I'm wanting to use enfleurage to get the fragrances, but I'm open to other methods. It is shockingly difficult to find instructions for capturing fragrances. The best I've seen is using fats and lards, but what kind? Some people say animal fat, but I couldn't imagine that not smelling awful. Very true. Do you have any suggestions for extracting fragrance or even recommendations to sources with instructions? Additionally, what are some of the best places to purchase fragrance oils specifically for perfumery? So great question. We'll kind of break it down because it looks like there is kind of a couple of kind of questions within that. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what he is referring to, enfleurage. Enfleurage is one of the many methods of extracting this. Oh, I just almost died there on camera. So enfleurage is one of the many methods of extracting the smell from a natural material, specifically from florals. So you use it a lot with gardenia or tuberose or jasmine. You'll hear about jasmine enfleurage, okay? So what they're doing is they're using a fat because a lot of these scent molecules are fat soluble. So you're putting the actual flowers, you're plucking the flowers, thousands of them. It's very time consuming and very effort consuming. You're putting them onto a basin, a shallow basin of fat, like a lard. I would recommend using like a coconut oil. Use a ultra processed coconut oil. Don't use just the raw coconut, the cheapy stuff, because that's going to have the smell of coconut and it's going to have a little bit of a smell to it. So use processed coconut oil, okay? Or you can use, there's a couple other ones, shea butter, some of the shea butters, but it has to be, again, it has to be totally neutral, unscented fat that you're using. So you're putting them face down onto this tray that you have, like maybe a cookie sheet with a thin layer, a 1/2 inch or 1/4 of an inch even thick of this fat. And then you're leaving them, sometimes it's 4 hours, sometimes it's 6 hours, sometimes it's even just an hour, and then you replace them with new ones. And you keep doing this until you totally saturate that fat with all of the aroma molecules that are coming from this natural source. Like the tuberose or whatever florals that you're trying to do. So look up different amounts, because each different floral is going to have different lengths of time that you're going to want to charge the fat for. So sometimes it could be, again, it could be as little as an hour to it could be like 12 hours, 16 hours. So a good starting point, if you're looking for a book that will kind of guide you through sort of the naturals, extracting naturals, is Homemade Perfume by Anya McCoy. I know there's a couple of other ones, and if I think of them, I'll put them in the comments of this video. There's a couple other ones that have specifically, great instructions for tincturing, which is the same thing but with alcohol, or doing enfleurage, things like that. Obviously there's Pouchers. Pouchers is like the go-to gold standard. It was made in like the 1930s or 40s or something like that, but people still use the Pouchers textbook in perfumery schools all around the world. So this is like it's the most like legendary perfumery textbook. Not just for spray applications like what you guys like and what I like to do, but also for like soaps, other cosmetics, for detergents, things like that. So that's another great textbook. Also, you can just scour the Base Notes forums. So Base Notes is the largest perfumery forum that there is, pretty much. And there's a lot of great resources on there, a lot of people who know a lot of stuff about perfumery and are in the perfumery industry. So that's kind of where us DIY perfumers go, is to glean some knowledge from them. So yeah, so you know, there's a couple of other methods of extraction that are a little more complicated. So there's tincturing, right? These spices that you said that your fiance is getting you a bunch of herbs and spices. So some of the spices you can definitely tincture, which would be putting them in ethanol, because the enfleurage is not going to work with a lot of the spices. So let's say you have some star anise seed. If you buy some of those and you crack them open and you toss them in some alcohol, maybe 20% by weight of the actual star anise seed, and then the rest of it you'll put ethanol, and you put it in a little container and you just leave it there for a month or so. You're going to get an amazing, you know, black licorice smelling tincture that you can use with your perfumery. So, you know, a lot of the spices, I would say go the tincturing route. And I mean, I know you're already, I can tell you're getting excited. Once that tincture once that tincture bug bites you, you're just gonna go crazy on everything. So the other day I did one toasted coconut, actually tinctures very well. So what you have to do, you know, mind you, if you get that shredded coconut, it has all this like sugar and all this other crap on it from the store. So just wash it off, rinse it off, make sure it's fully dried, then toast it in the oven until it's nice and toasted and you smell it and it's like, oh my God. And then you scrape it up and you put it in like a food processor and just mash the heck out of it, and then pour that into a container and then do the whole, you know, 20, 30, 40% weight, and the rest of it will be ethanol, and you leave it for a little bit. Make sure not to leave them too long. Some of them, and this is the same thing, there's a little bit of art to it. There's a little bit of playing around and looking for, you know, scouring the base notes, seeing if anybody has previously tinctured this. How long did you tincture it for before you start getting some of those deeper aroma molecules that are in the material that don't smell so good? There's a sweet spot, you know? So you can play around with it, you can learn on your own, but also just see if you can find anything. There's also the Reddit DIY fragrance subreddit. They're also relatively helpful there. Some of them are kind of mean, but most of them are nice guys. So, you know, guys and gals and whatever. So yeah, so those are some of the kind of the resources. Let's see, what are the, what kind? The animal fat, I would not go with a lot of the animal fats. People will say you can use some sort of a neutral lard, but I would go with some of the other stuff. There's also another method, maceration. So maceration, most of us in the fragrance consuming side of things, we know about maceration being you let the fragrance sit after opening it up and, you know, allowing it to get a little oxygen in there, or just giving it some time for all the molecules to interact and change over time and get better, right? That's one type of maceration. The other type of maceration is when you're extracting specifically from flowers, you use a warm oil. So you could use a coconut oil because it's perfect. I really would say coconut oil is the best because at room temperature it's solid, right? But it doesn't take much to heat it up and then make it liquid. So you use a warm liquid and then that will extract some of the flavor molecule or the aroma molecules. And then from there, what you can do is you can make an absolute if you want, where you use alcohol on top of that, you know, a mixture, and then you get the alcohol to extract all of the aroma molecules out of the fat. And then you kind of boil it down and make like a sticky, thick, you know, an absolute of it, which is a lot more, you know, a lot stronger, a lot more potent. Okay, so what are some of the best places to purchase fragrance oils specifically for perfumery? Now, I think, Larry, you were talking about more the natural side of things. So if you live in the United States, I'm not sure where you live. I'm in Seattle, but I would go with Eden Botanicals. Eden Botanicals is great. It's trusted. Here's the thing. If you buy stuff on Amazon, half of that stuff is just, it's not even vetted. It says that it's, you know, they do a GCMS, right? A gas chromatography mass spectroscopy to see that it's a real essential oil. Half of it is BS. Half of it is not even legit. So you gotta get it from a good source, man. So yeah, I would say Eden Botanicals is probably the best for naturals. There's some really good naturals on the perfumersapprentice.com. That's where I got all my aroma chemicals, my synthetics. Pell Wall is also great if you live in the UK. So if you're, I don't know where you live, man, but if you're in the UK, that would be a really great resource, would be the Pell Wall. Sam Macer, actually, another YouTuber that does like more of the perfumery side of things. I know I mostly do reviews, but he actually has his own website in the UK where he started selling materials. So I'm not sure what the price differences are, but he seems to be pretty legitimate with his pricing. So anyway, but I would say, yeah, for us in the US, Perfumer's Apprentice, and then Eden Botanicals is really good for naturals. So let's see what the other questions are. Where do you make your fragrances? Says Enigma12990. How's it going, Enigma? I make them right here. You're looking at it. This is where I make it. I've got a good amount of counter space here in this apartment that I live in. My girlfriend gets pissed off if I leave all my materials out for too long, so I kind of got to put it away. But I'll show you guys at the end of the video. I have like tubs and tubs. I have hundreds of different synthetic aroma chemicals, because there's hundreds and hundreds of them out there. And they all have different purposes and different things. I have a lot of naturals too, but you know, again, if you're making modern perfumery, you need a blend of the naturals and synthetics. Otherwise, it's just not gonna have that certain, you know, transparency and that effect that modern fragrances have. It gets a little bit heavy, and we end up calling it, in the perfumer world, we call it hippie juice, because it smells like that stuff, you know, at the Saturday market. So it's a little bit, you know, a little natural smelling, smells like essential oils. So anyway, so that's where I make it, right here. You know, I put my scale here. I try to organize as many of my ingredients as I can. These days it's hard because I have just so many. And most of them are liquids, but I have crystalline powders too, right? Like, what's one you guys would know? Vanillin, ethyl vanillin. Ambroxan is actually also a crystalline structure, a crystalline powder. Anyway, okay, next, user UJ8HL31140 says, how do you know which notes are top, middle, and base? Are some always top notes? So another great question. That's an awesome question, and it's a difficult one to answer. You guys are gonna hate my answer, but it depends. So there's a couple of things that you can look at, and you know, some websites like Perfumer's Apprentice or The Good Scents Company, if you go on base notes, and some of the perfumers there are talking about TGSC. That's just The Good Scents Company. It's just kind of one of those goated websites that we all know. They will tell you if it's a top, base, or middle note most of the time on those websites. But if you don't know that, then you can look up the molecular weight. Perfumer's Apprentice has the molecular weight listed on most of their fragrance ingredients. So one of the kind of the rules of thumb, let's say you're looking for a middle note, it's probably gonna be between 170-ish grams per mole and around maybe 230 grams per mole. Anything above 230, you know, if it's like 300 grams per mole, that is a heavy that's a heavy molecule. And it's gonna be a base note. That's gonna stick around for a long time probably. Now these aren't steady, you know, hard and fast rules. If it's like 110, then that's probably gonna be a nice light molecule, right? It's gonna fly off of whatever surface you're spraying it onto. So those nice light molecules, they diffuse easily and out into the, you know, surrounding whatever air. And it's gonna be more like a top note. That's not always true, so you can also look at the vapor pressure. That's where things get a little more complicated. I wouldn't worry about getting into the weeds with vapor pressure. Just look around and see. They're you know, either on the base notes or whatever, and then see if it's a top, middle, or base. In the end, you can also use, see, so it's complicated. You can also use tenacity on blotter. So tenacity on a blotter, it means they have a paper blotter and they put it on there, and then how long can you still smell it for? If it's like 400 hours, 800 hours, something like Evernil, right? Evernil will stick on there for like freaking 1,000 hours, I don't even know. Then that's a base note, right? But if it only sticks around for a little while, then that means this molecule is flying off of the blotter and the paper strip, and it's more like a top note. In the end, sometimes you just gotta work with the materials and play around with it, and then you'll realize, okay, well, these woody ones are usually the base notes, right? Some of the spices can be base notes, but usually the spices are around middle notes. You get a feel for things. Vanillin, ethyl vanillin, ethyl maltol, you're just gonna memorize that those are base notes, right? Yeah, woody stuff is usually base or middle. Top notes are gonna be more like your citruses. Citruses are very top heavy, right? A lot of citral, a lot of citronellol, things like that. Limetol is another great top note. And then the middle notes are gonna be like your florals and your spiciness stuff. And then the fruits, fruity fragrance ingredients are usually gonna be middle notes and top notes. But you could have something like raspberry ketone, where it's a base note. It sticks around forever, it doesn't make sense. So, you know, it's something you get a feel for over time. But that really is a great question, because it's harder than you think to just, you know, takes time. So you'll get there. Anyway, those are kind of the just general rules, you know, if you just think about like, all right, florals in the middle, whatever. Okay, then that last question, Mike5881 says, hi. Hey, hi, do you know what is note d'eau, please? Water? Thanks. So Mike, I was really interested by your question, and I want to know where you heard about this note d'eau, like as if it's a fragrance note. Maybe there was a fragrance that you saw that said note d'eau. I looked it up, and it looks like there's a fragrance by Dior, J'adore. It's one of their J'adore flankers, J'adore Parfum d'eau. It's mostly white floral, so it's just like the scent, you know, or like the essence, I guess. It's mostly a white floral one with like tuberose and jasmine and stuff like that. Some green notes. Usually, if you want to make a water, if you want to talk water, you know, watery fragrances usually will have green notes like stemone or cis-3-hexanol. Stuff like that. Some of the aldehydes are a little watery, soapy. Aquaflora is really great. Aquamate is also a really great synthetic aroma chemical. Calone is also a really great kind of aquatic melon scented fragrance note. If you want to go kind of more the cucumbery route, then you can use nonadienol. Just be careful, it's really strong, so use it probably at like 1%. So nonadienol is also really great. Aquaflora, Florhydrol, Fluorozone. Some of those ozonic materials are also really good. So really, there's a ton of, you know, aquatic materials you can use out there to get that watery note if that's what you're looking for in your fragrance. What I would search if you're searching by description in Perfumer's Apprentice is look up, like, just search aquatic, and you'll find so many. There's also Maritima. Maritima is also kind of good. It's sort of like algae though. Alginone is really good, but Maritima is almost like a stinky, like you go to the seaside and you smell that, and you're like, kind of has a nasty smell, but also kind of reminds me of being on vacation, so it's kind of nice. You gotta be careful with some of these. They're powerful. It's powerful shit. Anyway. So great questions, guys. I hope I answered some of your questions there. You know, if you have any other questions about perfumery, really, I'm always here. You know, I know that most of you guys watch me for my reviews that I do, but I really like making perfume. I've been doing it for years, and you know, I just remember when I first started, it's very difficult to learn because there's pretty much no books out there. There's pretty much, you probably will never meet someone in real life that makes perfumes. It's just so rare. It's such a rare hobby, and there's pretty much nobody else out there that does it. So there's just these tight-knit little communities of people that sometimes share their knowledge, and sometimes they just kind of push you off and say, hey, you know, you got to learn on your own. So it really is tough. So if you guys ever have any questions about that stuff, I know we had been kind of talking, one of my subscribers and I had been talking about setting up like a Patreon kind of thing where you guys could ask questions. So I'm open to doing that maybe in this coming year. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I know it's not what I usually make videos on, but yeah, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.